Hello students, welcome back to social science class. Hope you're all fine and safe. Today let us discuss about ancient civilizations of the world part 3. In previous two classes we have discussed about Egyptian civilization and today we shall learn about Mesopotamian civilization. The Mesopotamian civilization originated in Tigris and Euphrates Valley. The land between the rivers Tigris and Euphrates is called as Mesopotamia. Now let's discuss about Mesopotamian civilization in detail. The word Mesopotamia means the land between rivers. It was due to the two rivers Euphrates and Tigris that the West Asian barren land had become very fertile. As food crops could be easily grown because of the fertility of the land, the northern hilly tribes and the southern nomadic tribes of the desert wanted to establish control over this area. Also, the most important area of the Mesopotamian civilization was the southern part of the valley between the Euphrates and Tigris, rivers referred to as Babylonia. The northern part of Babylonia was called Akkad, and the southern part was called as Sumer. The hanging gardens were created on the banks of the river Euphrates around 7th century BC. It was built by Nebuchadnezzar II. The north part of Mesopotamia was known as Assyria. Although there were many conflicts amongst the tribes to gain control over the fertile land, it eventually led to the emergence of a strong race. As a result, the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, Persians were ruling this Mesopotamian region. These tribes used a system of writing called cuneiform for 30 centuries. Sumerians, the hilly tribe from the north, were the first to enter Mesopotamia in 4000 BC. They were also the first ones to evolve a system of writing in Mesopotamia. They used to worship their gods on top of the hills. However, after coming to the plains, they built artificial hills and established their places of worship there. These were called ziggurat. They did not know to build stairs and therefore surrounded them with sloping galleries. The Jews called these the Towers of Babel. The Sumerians, overpowered by the Akkadians, one of the tribes of the Arabian desert. These are known as Semites. They formed the first united empire where the city-states of the Sumer were united under one ruler. The Akkadian language replaced the Sumerian language during this time. After 1,000 years, the Akkadians were ruled by the Amorites, another Semitic tribe. The most famous king of the Amorites was Hammurabi, who built a beautiful palace for himself in Babylonia. He framed the codes of law in order to protect the rights of all sections of the Babylonian society, especially women and slaves. Now, let's discuss about the Code of Law, which was framed by Hammurabi. The main source of the law codes of Hammurabi are the rock edicts found in 1901 CE. Today, this has been kept in the Louvre Museum of Paris. Hammurabi's law enforced the logic of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. That is, if a man destroys the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. Hammurabi law codes are one among the most ancient of the codes available to us. They were probably written to protect the rights of all the sections of Babylonian society. especially for women and slaves. After Hammurabi, the most famous king of the Amorites, the Hittites occupied the valley. The Hittites were overpowered by the Assyrians, who were the followers of Ashura, the desert god. The Assyrians occupied the whole of West Asia and Egypt till about 7th century BC and collected tax from all people there. The Chaldeans were another Semitic tribe who re-established Babylonia in the 7th century BC and developed it into a prominent capital of that time. Nebuchadnezzar was the greatest king among them who encouraged study of science. And he has built a beautiful hanging gardens during his time. For his beloved wife, he built hanging gardens. Hanging gardens, which was one of the 7 wonders of the old world. It is believed that Nebuchadnezzar has built it. Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Amitis, was from Mead. It is said that Nebuchadnezzar got the gardens built in order to console his wife who was missing the beautiful environment of hills, trees and flowers of her motherland. Some scholars opine that the gardens were created by Assyrian queen Samuramat. In reality, if you see these hanging gardens, did not hang in the air. The trees and bushes were grown at different levels or terraced land of the ziggurats. When the branches hung at different levels and swayed, they gave the onlooker an impression of being a hanging garden. The river Euphrates provided the water for these gardens. It's really a marvelous work of those times. Now let's move on to the decline of this civilization. Now let's discuss about the decline of Mesopotamian civilization. The Chaldeans were attacked by the Persians in the 6th century BC. 200 years later, Alexander transformed this place of Semitic people into Greek province. After the rulers of Romans and Turks who followed Alexander, the civilization started declining and turned into wilderness. Now, you'd have learned Mesopotamian civilization, which was fascinating everyone in the ancient world and even today. Now, let's summarize the points, the important points. The Mesopotamian civilization flourished in the area between the rivers Euphrates and Tigris. The tribes which entered the fertile valley of Mesopotamia were the Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Persians. The tribes used a system of writing called cuneiform. The Sumerians built artificial hills and established their places of worship there. These were called ziggurat. The Akkadians formed the first united empire where the cities-states of the Sumer were united under one ruler. The king of the Amorites, Hammurabi, framed the codes of law in order to protect the rights of all sections of Babylonian society, especially women and slaves. The Chaldeans were another Semitic tribe who re-established Babylonia in the 7th century BC and developed it into a prominent capital of that time. After the rulers of Romans and Turks who followed Alexander, this civilization declined and turned into a wilderness. Dear students, you have understood this lesson, Mesopotamian civilization. Are you all ready for the question hour? Good. Let's move on to question hour. The first question is, what do you mean by the word Mesopotamia? The answer is, the word Mesopotamia derived from Greek word which means the land between rivers. What do you mean by Mesopotamia? The land between rivers. The word Mesopotamia means the land between rivers. The second question is, name the system of writing used by Mesopotamians. Answer. The system of writing used by Mesopotamians was cuneiform. What was that? Cuneiform. The system of writing used by Mesopotamians was cuneiform. Shall we go for the third one? Who built hanging gardens? Nebuchadnezzar II built hanging gardens. What is the answer? Nebuchadnezzar II built hanging gardens for his beloved wife Amytis, who was missing her motherland. I repeat the answer. Nebuchadnezzar II built hanging gardens for his beloved wife Amytis, who missed her motherland. Fourth question is, which structure was called as ziggurat? The Sumerians built artificial hills in the plains and established their places of worship. These structures were called as ziggurats. Shall I repeat the answer? The Sumerians built artificial hills in the plains and established their places of worship. These structures were called as ziggurat. Shall we go for the fifth one? Who was Ashura? Ashura was the desert god worshipped by Assyrians. Who was Ashura? Ashura was the desert god who was worshipped by Assyrians. Children, learn this lesson, that is Mesopotamian civilization, properly. Read through the textbook. Second, you have to watch this video class again and again. And next, you have to write your homework on time and submit it. And write your classwork, that is workbook. And whenever we are mentioning, you have to post it to me personally. Okay, thank you children. Until then, bye-bye. In the next class, we'll learn about Chinese civilization.